The body of Seamus O'Malley wasn't discovered until days after his death. His hair had turned silver, but his DNA didn't match the strands of the white hair that was found entwined around the fingers of his right hand. This impossible account that you're about to hear, it's considered the ravings of a madman, but the deaths recorded within truly match those fatalities on record in the area. This is to be my last testimony, because the wailing has come again tonight. Right there. Don't you hear that? That's the same sound I've heard since receiving the letter. And there's frost on the window again. And the sight of Nicole's face. It's forming in the frost. Looks like she's aged 100 years. But it's her. I saw it coming. As soon as I saw those 3 damn hairs appear laced in my fingers today. White as bone. And appearing from nowhere. Just as those dead birds did. Carefully arranged in that shape. The one that is sure to drive me mad forever. In my 27 years serving the parish near Leap Castle, I documented 17 deaths preceded by the Banshee's wail. In all those years, Nicole Brennan's case, it was the only one where someone saw the being she before the deaths began. I pray it never happens again, and that God will forgive me for what I'm about to share with you. Leap Castle, it's been soaked in blood since 1532. It's when Ty O'Carroll murdered his brother, Thaddeus. He was a priest, and during Mass, it's what's become known as the Bloody Chapel. Murder between brothers, that's a sin as old as Cain and Abel, and this one, to a man of God, even as he led his congregation in worship. God, I can't imagine no greater sin than that. And it was on that awful Sabbath that the castle began to draw the darkness to it. Now, through the years, many have seen these phantom lights in the castle, even when it stood abandoned after this mysterious 1922 fire. The locals feared these lights. 3 nights before Nicole Brennan arrived in Ireland, those same lights, they were seen glowing from the upper windows of the castle. I should have recognized that warning. American-born but of O'Carroll blood, Nicole was 19 and one of the 5 families traditionally haunted by the Banshee. I'm one of the others. My mother was an O'Grady, and that's a secret, and I've kept it throughout my entire priesthood. I should have told Nicole. I used to hear that wailing as a child. It was so loud on the night of my grandmother's death that I thought my head was going to burst wide open. I recognized that otherworldly scream the instant Nicole described it to me, but I pretended otherwise. God, forgive my silence. I should have told the world before now. But what good would my words have done to stop it? Nicole came to Ireland after her mother's suicide. She was desperate for a connection to something larger than her grief. And when her body was found, her mother was gripping an old photograph in her hand, and it was a picture of Leap Castle with the words, "Never return." It was scrawled on the back. Well, instead of keeping her word, that drew the girl here, across an ocean, carrying that confidence that only youth provides, and a wound that only answers can heal. And she had no understanding of the old ways, of the old warnings. I mean, how could she? Her parents had fled Ireland before she was born, sealing away that family history just like I have done. And that was what drove her mother to take her own life. On the anniversary of her grandmother's death, in the same manner, at the same hour. I met Nicole at Sunday Mass on her first week here. Her eyes, they were hollow with that grief. I instantly recognized it. It's the same emptiness that I'd seen in countless funerals throughout my ministry. She stayed after service. She was clutching her mother's photograph of Leap Castle, and she was asking everyone about the O'Carrolls, about those suicides that had plagued the women in her family for generations. And I warned her. God help me, I tried to warn her. But youth, it seldom heeds the caution of the old, especially when driven by that desperate need to understand one's own blood. I told her that castle is dangerous, and that some places they hold memories, but they're best left undisturbed. And when I mentioned the Banshee, something flickered in her eyes. It was a recognition, perhaps, and she whispered, "My mother used to wake screaming about a woman combing her hair outside of her window." And she smiled politely. and she thanked me for my concern, and she left with that determination. It chilled me more than any winter wind. 3 days later, Peter Bartlett, he had recently purchased the castle. He found Nicole wandering the grounds, and he should have sent her away, but instead he offered her to show her inside. It could have been that he was proud of his new acquisition, but perhaps he was just taking too great of a liberty to have the intention of a pretty young girl. Either way, that mistake, it haunts me. Nicole later told me that she felt drawn to the Bloody Chapel as if it was something that was calling to her. While exploring, she discovered the entrance to the oubliette. It's this terrible pit behind the altar with a trap door. It's where the O'Carrolls dispatched their enemies. And when it was discovered in the 1800s, workers removed 3 carts of human skeletons from its depths. Nicole couldn't have known that, but the dead, they don't forget such desecration. And it was right there, right at the edge of the oubliette. That's where Nicole found the silver comb. Silver, ancient, Celtic patterns etched into the spine and teeth that gleamed despite centuries of darkness. And she said that instead of the metal glimmering in the sunlight, it looked as though everything around it was brighter. It looked like the comb existed in the absence of light itself. She said it smelled of the sea, and she described it as ice cold to the touch but impossible to put down. Against all sense, she took it. And that very night, as darkness fell over County Offaly, the local Fitzgerald reported seeing the phantom light moving through the castle windows, tracing this path from room to room. It was like it was searching for something, but no one was inside. Nicole returned to her lodgings at the farmhouse of her distant cousin Mary Kearney, and she showed the comb to no one, hiding it beneath her pillow when she slept. She told me later that she just couldn't explain why, but only that she felt that someone might take it from her, and that she wouldn't ever allow that to happen. Well, that first night, the family heard nothing, but Nicole woke up to find frost on her bedroom window in July. She dismissed that as some oddity of Irish weather, and she didn't notice this single strand of long white hair that was now wrapped around the comb's teeth, though she swore to me later it wasn't there when she found it. The second night, Mary's husband Thomas heard it first. This faint wailing, it was distant. It was like a woman in mourning. It was just the wind, he told his wife, though the air outside was still. They both slept poorly that night. They were troubled by dreams that they couldn't remember in the morning. Waking late that day, Nicole was surprised that dawn hadn't poured in through the opening she had left in the curtain. She was curious. She moved to the window, and then she started to feel a sense of dread as she discerned this black mass that was blocking the glow of the day from ever reaching her. Lifting the blind, horror flooded through her at the sight of 3 dead crows. Their bodies were unnaturally twisted. Holding back a sickly gag in her throat, she slapped at the glass to try and knock the corpses away, and she was shocked when the vibration of the window glass caused the birds' bodies to crumble into dust. The third night, the wailing grew louder, transforming from just mournful into something ravenous. Mary shook Nicole awake at midnight, and her fingers were digging into her shoulders so much so that it left bruises on her the next day. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice is cracking. "Do you hear what it's saying?" The women huddled near the window. They were listening to that wail, and sure enough, there was a message contained in that haunted moan. It droned on. It was carrying out every letter of its one-word cry. And when Nicole finally discerned what that word was, it felt like a curse upon her eardrums. "Nicole." Mary gasped in terror and disbelief. "It knows your name?" It was a ghastly truth. That was her name, elongated into a terrible song. And as they listened there, frozen in primal fear, the cry moved, first from the distant fields, then closer into the garden, until it screamed so loud it sounded like it was directly beneath Nicole's window. And that glass rattled in its frame. It was vibrating at this frequency. It made their teeth ache. It made their ears bleed in thin streams. Adding awful sight to that sound, a thick and sudden frost formed on the glass from the outside, and it was spreading in these delicate patterns that coalesced into the unmistakable image of a woman's face, eyes hollow, mouth stretched in a silent scream. Then the women cried out as they saw that face in the frost blink. Just once, but impossibly so. Yet they saw it, this otherworldly image moving on the glass right before it cracked, corner to corner, creating this unmistakable shape of a comb in the shattered glass. They slept not at all that night. The dawn brought tragedy to add to their fear, because it was learned that Nicole's great-uncle, Sean O'Carroll, had died in his sleep that night. The doctor called it natural causes. It was a heart attack. But when they found him, his eyes were open wide in terror. His mouth was frozen in a scream, and his hands were clutching at his once red hair that had turned completely silver overnight. There were these deep impressions left on either side of his bed, 2 slender depressions in the mattress, as if someone had sat beside him while he died. And when the mortician prepared his body, he discovered these deep comb marks running along Sean's scalp, and the skin beneath was raw and bloodied. It was as if someone had groomed him with cruel power and precision. And when Nicole told me of these events the next day, I recognized that pattern immediately. The Banshee. It's the woman of the fairy mound. She must have been awakened. My lips were quaking as I asked if she had taken anything from the castle. Her hesitation told me everything. Just a comb, she finally admitted, pulling it out from her pocket, and the moment I saw it, I felt this unnatural chill. There were now 3 white hairs wrapped tight around the comb's sharp teeth, and that's when I told her the truth. Not all of it, damn me. Not of my lineage, but of the Irish folklore, of the Banshee that appears to the 5 ancient families, the O'Neills, O'Briens, O'Connors, O'Grady's, and the O'Carrolls. She appears when death approaches, combing her long white hair with a silver comb. To take her comb, that's to invite her wrath. Nicole laughed at first, the nervous laughter of disbelief. But there was fear behind her eyes. She had felt something these past nights. She had seen the frost, the dead birds. She had heard the wailing. It's just a comb, she insisted, but her fingers trembled as she held it. I urged her to return it to where she found it, and she agreed, but only if I accompanied her to the castle. And for some reason, Peter couldn't be reached. So we vowed to go the following afternoon with or without his permission. And that night Mary called me in a panic. The wailing had started again, but this time, different. It was louder, it was angrier, and Nicole had seen something outside of her window. It was a beautiful young woman with flowing hair one moment, but once that hair blew across her face, it revealed a face transformed into that of a withered crone. And that apparition pointed her long, wrinkled finger directly at Nicole, mouth opening impossibly wide. When I arrived at the farmhouse, I found the family huddled in the kitchen. Nicole was pale and shaking. The silver comb lay on the table between us, now with 7 white hairs wrapped around it. We were too late. That night, Nicole's second cousin, James O'Carroll, collapsed at dinner. Blood streaming from his eyes and ears, and he was dead before the ambulance arrived. 2 days later, Mary's sister, Eileen, followed then by Mary's brother, Patrick, and finally Mary's youngest son, David, was found dead, all O'Carrolls by blood, and all preceded by the wailing, all dying in ways that doctors could not explain. 5 deaths in 2 weeks, the village whispered they knew. The old ones remembered the stories. We returned to Leap Castle the day after David's funeral. The phantom light had been seen every night since Nicole took that comb, tracing erratic patterns through the darkness, and locals swore that the light's path spelled out Nicole's name in Gaelic. Peter Bartlett finally answered but refused to set foot inside after finding a bird's nest in the main hall containing nothing but silver combs made of tiny bones. The sight had sent him racing out of town, and that was the reason we hadn't been able to reach him. We could no longer count on his guidance, If we were returning to Leap Castle, it would be alone. Nicole and I entered the bloody chapel just as the sun began to set. The moment that we passed that threshold, my crucifix grew cold against my chest. It left this cross-shaped scar. I still carry that to this day. And the air inside, it felt thick. It was resistant, as if something did not want us there, or worse, it was as if something was eagerly pulling us deeper. The temperature dropped with each step that we took toward the altar, and our footsteps were echoing too many times. It was as if someone was walking alongside us, just out of sight. At first I thought Peter had laid a new ornate carpet around the altar, and it was a thought that warmed my mind at first. But then that false hope melted into disgust as I realized that wasn't fabric at all. That was blood. That was fresh and impossibly red, seeping from beneath the stones where Thaddeus O'Carroll had been murdered centuries ago. The pattern of that running gore in the broken tiled floor was so intricate that it looked like a tapestry of red. I reached out to steady myself against the wall, and that's when I felt the stones themselves throbbing beneath my palm. They were warm and rhythmic like a beating heart. Just place that comb precisely where you found it, and let's do as your mother's photograph told us. Let's get away from this place forever. My voice caught as I tasted copper in the air. My faith, the bedrock of my existence for 40 years, it suddenly felt thin as paper against this ancient power gathering all around us. Return it fast and don't look back, no matter what you hear or what calls your name. And she approached the obolant, and the comb was clutched in her trembling hand, and the silver pulsed. White hairs were now writhing like living things between its teeth. And Nicole's face, it had grown gaunt since finding it. Her own youthful hair was now streaked with this unnatural white. As she knelt down, her knees left bloody prints on the stone. And that's when we both heard it. Just for an instant, I hoped it was a police siren, an ambulance. I hoped it was anything that offered a sense of help and hope. But the pit that grew in my stomach as the sound continued let me know that terrible truth. It was the wailing of the Banshee, but this time it was inside this chapel with us. And a sound no mechanical siren could mimic, that a human throat could ever produce. And I turned, and I saw her. My heart was seizing in my chest. By that door stood a woman in white, and her long hair was flowing as if underwater, though the air around us was still. Her face shifted between beauty and decay, youth and ancient age, and her unnatural face, it cycled these visages of recently dead O'Carrolls. Eileen, Patrick, Sean, David, and their screaming faces were condemning us. And then I recognized with horror that one of those faces was Nicole's own, and in her hand she held another silver comb, identical to the one Nicole carried, dripping with something dark that sizzled when it hit the stone floor. Nicole's scream harmonized perfectly with the Banshee's wail. It was as if they were now two parts of this unholy choir. The Banshee's mouth unhinged like a serpent's jaw, but her wail was coming from everywhere. The walls, the floor, our own minds. The sound carried physical weight. It was driving me to my knees as blood trickled from my ears. I felt my sanity fraying at the edges, and within it the cry contained that pain of every soul who had died in this castle, and there were many. And now we bore witness to the anguish of their final moments, all compressed into one single, eternal scream. "Put it down," I shouted to Nicole over that deafening cry, struggling to remember the words of exorcism that had abandoned me in my terror. My rosary beads, and they shattered in my grip, each wooden bead turning to ash between my fingers. Nicole's eyes had rolled back in her head, showing only white as she fought against some invisible force controlling her limbs. And as she reached for that obolette, I saw 3 of her delicate fingers snap and break under an unseen force, but still she pushed through. She was crying out with this final violent effort as she struggled to return that silver comb right to the edge of the obolette, right where she had found it. And just as the silver touched that stone, the comb itself melted into the ancient rock, leaving only a silver stain in the shape of a woman's profile. Collapsing onto the stone, blood streamed from Nicole's nose and eyes, and I crawled to her. My legs were refusing to support me, and I pulled her into my arms. And that wailing, it stopped with such abruptness that silence physically hurt. It was like a blade to my eardrum. And when we looked toward the door, the figure was gone, but in her place stood 5 transparent shapes, the recently deceased O'Carrolls, and their faces were now at peace, and their forms were fading as we watched. And after that day, the phantom lights vanished from the windows of Leap Castle. For a time, we believed it was over, but one night, as I bathed, I found a single long white hair wrapped around my wrist that tightened. When I tried to remove it, it was cutting into my flesh before dissolving completely into my skin. Nicole left Ireland 1 week later, returning to America. She never spoke of what happened, not to anyone. And I received occasional letters from her over the years, always careful. They're always avoiding any mention of her awful experience at Leap Castle. But some curses don't end, they merely wait. 7 years later, in 1981, I received a sorrowful letter from Nicole's mother. Nicole had died in her sleep the previous night, on the anniversary of our visit to Leap Castle, at the exact minute that we returned the comb. And the autopsy found impossible injuries. Her scalp was flayed by what appeared to be comb marks, and her throat was damaged as if from screaming, though no one ever heard a sound. Her hair was completely white, though she was still only 26. Most disturbing of all to her mother had been Nicole's face, frozen in this expression of absolute terror. Her eyes were fixed on something at the foot of her bed, and her fingers were broken in the exact same pattern as when she forced herself to return that comb. The letter arrived the morning I began recording this testimony, and since then, I've heard the wailing myself. It's growing closer each night, and it begins at the exact same time when Nicole died. Last evening, I found frost on my window, though it's August and unusually warm. The icy pattern formed a perfect image of Nicole's face. It's aged as if she lived to be 100. And this morning, there were 3 dead birds at my doorstep, arranged in the shape of a comb, and their tail feathers were woven together to spell a word that I've kept hidden from the world, my mother's maiden name, O'Grady. And when I look in the mirror, sometimes my reflection continues moving after I've stopped, combing hair that grows more silver by the hour. I leave this record as both a warning and a confession. The Banshee doesn't merely foretell death. She collects what belongs to her, generation after generation. We are all connected by blood and bone to ancient things that we've tried to forget. The Banshee of Leap Castle continues to wail, waiting for those who will hear it. I hear her now. She's outside my door. Father Seamus O'Malley was found dead in his study on August 17th, 1981, 7 days after recording this testimony. The cause of death was officially listed as heart failure. In 2003, Sean Ryan purchased Leap Castle and began renovations. He reports hearing a woman's wail in the early hours of many mornings. During the work on the castle, archaeologists excavating the obolette uncovered a silver comb embedded in the stone. It contained 3 strands of white hair. The comb was removed from the castle grounds and was taken for DNA testing, where it was revealed that the hairs belonged to 3 different people across 3 different centuries. More research was due to be conducted, but the laboratory was struck by a freak storm that took the lives of 7 scientists. To this day, visitors to Leap Castle claim to see the phantom lights in the windows and, occasionally, a woman combing her long white hair. For over 500 years, the Banshee of Leap Castle has collected souls, watching and waiting for her next victim. Ancient Irish folklore warns that simply learning about the Banshee may draw her attention to you. Well, now that you've heard this story, do you want to hear more about the ancient truths of the Banshees? Have you caught a distant wailing on quiet nights? If you've experienced something that you couldn't explain, or you felt a presence watching you from the corner of the room, share your story in the comments below. And subscribe now to join our community of the curious and the brave, who dare to explore what lurks beyond the veil. After all, in the darkness, we have safety in numbers, though the Banshee always finds a way to isolate her prey. Well, we'll see you in the next video.